My name is Estella. I grew up in a small village near the river. I lived with my sister, Mrs. Joe, and her kind husband, Joe Gargery. Joe was a blacksmith. He worked hard and had a warm heart. My sister was strict and often angry, but Joe was gentle. I helped him sometimes in his little workshop. I liked the sound of the hammer and fire. It made me feel safe. We did not have much money. Our house was small, but Joe always said we had love, and that was enough. I often looked out at the road and dreamed of something more. I wanted to see London one day. I wanted to be a lady, to wear fine clothes, to live in a big house. But dreams were far away from our little village. One cold evening, something strange happened. I was walking near the churchyard. The wind was cold and the sky was gray. Suddenly, a man came out from behind the graves. His clothes were dirty. His face was full of fear. He was shaking. He said, "Don't scream!" I froze. He looked hungry and weak. He asked for food and a file to cut his chains. I was scared, but I felt sorry for him. I promised to bring him what he needed. That night, while my sister slept, I quietly took some bread and meat from the kitchen. I also took a file from Joe's tools. The next morning, I went back to the churchyard and gave the things to the man. He said, "God bless you, girl." I ran home quickly, my heart beating fast. Later, I heard that 2 prisoners had been caught. I never forgot the look in that man's eyes. Some weeks later, a rich lady in the village sent a message. Her name was Miss Havisham. She wanted a young girl to visit her house and play. My sister was happy because she thought Miss Havisham might help us one day. So one morning, Joe took me to her big, strange house called Saddis House. The house was old and dark. The windows were closed. A servant led me inside. Miss Havisham was sitting in a room full of old things. She wore a wedding dress, but it was yellow and dusty. She had not taken it off for many years. The clocks in her house had stopped at the same time. She looked at me carefully and smiled in a sad way. "Come here, Estella," she said softly. "You may play with the boy in the garden." There I met Pip. He was about my age, with kind blue eyes and a shy smile. He looked nervous. Miss Havisham watched us play cards and asked me to talk with him. Sometimes she laughed quietly to herself. I did not understand her. There was a strange sadness in the house, and I could feel it. Pip was gentle, but Miss Havisham seemed to enjoy seeing me speak coldly to him. She would whisper, "Break his heart." When I came home, I could not stop thinking about that house. Everything there felt different, like a dream that was both beautiful and sad. Miss Havisham asked me to come again. I went many times after that. She gave me fine dresses to wear and taught me how to walk and speak like a lady. She said I was meant for something higher, but Joe did not like it. He said, "You're kind and good as you are, Estella. Don't let rich people change your heart." I smiled at him, but deep inside I wanted to be more. I wanted people to look at me and see someone important. One day Miss Havisham told me, "You must learn to be proud, Estella. The world is cruel. Never let your heart be weak." Her words stayed with me. I did not know she spoke from her own pain. Years passed. I grew taller. Miss Havisham sent me to a fine school. I began to forget the smell of Joe's workshop and the warmth of our small home. When I visited the village, Joe's hands looked rough and his clothes simple. I felt different. I loved him, but I also felt far away from him. Then something happened that changed my life forever. One evening, a lawyer came to our house. His name was Mr. Jaggers. He looked serious and cold. He said, "Miss Estella, you have a great expectation. A secret person has given you money. You will be educated as a lady in London." I could not believe it. Me? A lady in London? My sister was shocked. Joe smiled sadly. "I'm happy for you, Estella," he said. "Don't forget us." I packed my things the next morning. Miss Havisham hugged me lightly and said, "Remember what I taught you." Pip stood near the door, quiet. He said, "I'll miss you." I smiled, but I did not know what to say. My heart was full of dreams. I thought my life would soon be perfect. I thought I would never feel small again. But as I left the village and looked back at Joe's little house, I felt something inside me twist softly, like a string being pulled. I did not know why, but it hurt a little. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was goodbye. That night, on the road to London, I watched the moon from the carriage window. I whispered to myself, "My life begins now." Before I continue the story, please like, subscribe, share, and tell me where you are listening from. Your support means a lot to me. Now let's continue. London was big, loud, and full of smoke. I had never seen so many people before. The streets were busy, the carriages never stopped, and the air smelled of rain and horses. I lived in a fine apartment with a maid and a teacher who helped me learn how to behave like a lady. I had lessons in reading, dancing, and music. Sometimes I looked at myself in the mirror and almost did not know who I was. At first, everything felt like a dream. I had new dresses, soft shoes, and dinners with candles and gold plates. People called me Miss Estella. They said I was beautiful. When I walked through the streets, men turned to look. I smiled, proud and tall, just like Miss Havisham had taught me. But sometimes, late at night, when the city was quiet, I thought about Joe. I could almost hear the sound of his hammer. I remembered his kind eyes and his warm voice. I missed him, though I did not say it. I told myself that life in London was what I wanted, that love and dreams were the same thing. But deep inside, I was not sure. One evening, Mr. Jaggers called me to his office. He said, "Miss Estella, your education is complete. You are now a lady. You will meet people of high class. Choose your friends carefully." His face never changed. I asked him about my secret benefactor, but he only said, "That person wishes to remain unknown." I often went to dinners and dances. Many young men wanted to talk to me. Some spoke about their houses and their money. I smiled, but none of them touched my heart. I told myself I had no time for love. Love, I thought, made people weak. Then, one day, I saw Pip again. He was not the same boy I had played with in Miss Havisham's garden. He was tall, handsome, and quiet. His clothes were clean and fine. When he saw me, he smiled in a shy way, like before. "Estella," he said softly, "you look wonderful." Something in his voice made me remember our old days. I wanted to smile back, but I didn't. Miss Havisham's words were still in my mind. Be proud. Never show weakness. So I said, "You have changed too, Pip. I hear you live in the city now." He nodded. "Yes, I am learning to be a gentleman." We met again several times. Pip was always kind and gentle. He asked about my studies, my life, and if I was happy. I told him I was very happy. But when I looked into his eyes, I saw a warmth that scared me. It felt too honest, too strong. I didn't know how to handle that feeling. Sometimes Miss Havisham invited me back to Satis house. She was older now and her face looked tired. She would ask, "Do men still follow you, Estella?" I said yes. She smiled, a cold smile. "Good. Let them love you, but never love them back." I wanted to ask her why she hated love so much, but I was afraid. I thought maybe she had once been hurt. I didn't want to be hurt like her, so I listened to her advice. I told myself love was dangerous. Months passed. Pip began to visit me often. We went for walks by the river or sat quietly in the garden. He looked at me with eyes full of something I didn't understand. Sometimes when he spoke, I could hear his heart behind his words. "Estella," he said once, "you are in my thoughts all the time." I looked away. "Please, don't say that, Pip." "Why not?" he asked. "Because it cannot be," I said. "I cannot love you." I saw pain in his eyes, but he smiled. "You don't have to say it now," he whispered. "Maybe one day." That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and thought about Pip's words. Why couldn't I love him? He was kind and true. But Miss Havisham's voice returned in my mind, sharp and cold. "Love breaks hearts. Be strong." I had promised myself I would never be weak. Some months later, I met a man named Bentley Drummel. He was rich, proud, and rude. He liked to talk about his money and his horses. I did not like him, but he was powerful. People respected him. When he looked at me, I saw admiration, not love. That made me feel safe. Love was dangerous, but admiration was easy. One day, Miss Havisham called me to her room. "Estella," she said, "you must marry soon. Drummel has asked for your hand." I was silent. You should accept, she said. You will have a grand life. You will never need anyone. I asked softly, Is this what you want for me? She looked away. Yes, this is what I was made for, and what I made you for. Her words hurt me. I felt like a puppet in her story. But I said nothing. I was too afraid to displease her. That week, Pip came to visit me again. When he heard about my marriage, his face turned pale. Estella, he said, you cannot marry that man. He doesn't deserve you. I said calmly, You think you know me, Pip, but you don't. I am what Miss Havisham made me. His voice trembled. No, Estella. You are better than that. You have a heart. I have seen it. I looked at him, and for a moment I wanted to cry. But I didn't. I told you long ago, Pip. I cannot love you. He took my hand, his eyes wet. I will always care for you, even if you don't love me. I pulled my hand away. Then please forget me. He left without another word. I stood there, cold and proud, but inside something broke quietly. I did not know what it was then. After that, I married Bentley Drummel. The wedding was big and full of guests. Everyone smiled, but I felt nothing. The church bells sounded far away, as if they rang for someone else. When I looked at my husband, I saw no kindness in his eyes. I told myself I didn't need kindness. I needed strength. But marriage was not what I imagined. Drummel was cruel. He cared only about his money and friends. He often laughed at me or spoke to me harshly. When I cried, he said, You wanted this life, didn't you? Sometimes I sat alone and thought about Joe and Pip and the warm little house near the river. I remembered Joe's soft laugh and Pip's shy smile. I missed the simple days when love was real and life was small but full. Now I had everything I once dreamed of, yet I felt empty. One winter night, Drummel came home angry. He had lost money in a bet. He shouted at me and broke a chair. I stood still, my hands shaking. When he left the room, I sat by the fire and whispered to myself, Is this what greatness feels like? Years passed slowly. I stopped writing letters to Miss Havisham. I could not forgive her, but I also could not hate her completely. I understood now that she had loved once, and her heart was broken. She had tried to protect me by teaching me not to love, but in doing that, she had stolen my heart's warmth. Then, one day, I received news that Miss Havisham was ill. I went back to Saddis house. The rooms were the same, dark and full of dust. Miss Havisham sat by the fire, her dress still old and yellow. When she saw me, she began to cry. My dear Estella, she said, I made a terrible mistake. I wanted to save you from pain, but I gave you pain instead. Can you forgive me? Her voice was weak. For the first time, I saw her not as a rich woman, but as a broken one. I held her hand. I forgive you, I said quietly. She smiled faintly, and tears rolled down her cheeks. "You were my only light," she whispered. That night, I stayed by her side until she slept. I looked around the room and thought about my life. I had become a lady, just as I wanted, but I was not happy. I realized that being a lady was not about clothes or houses. It was about kindness, love, and truth. I had lost all three. When I left the house the next morning, the air felt heavy. I looked at the gray sky and wondered where Pip was. I had not seen him in years. I didn't know if he still cared or if he had forgotten me. But somewhere deep inside, a small voice said, "He never stopped." I walked slowly back to my carriage, holding my heart like a secret. For the first time, I wished I could turn back time, to the garden, to the boy with blue eyes, to the moment when I could have said, "Yes, Pip, I love you too." But life does not turn back. It only moves forward. And I was finally beginning to understand what it had all meant. After my visit to Satis House, I went back to London. The city did not look the same anymore. I had lived there for many years, but it no longer felt like home. My husband, Bentley Drummel, became colder every day. He was cruel and proud. I spoke less and less. When I looked at him, I saw a stranger. I realized I had made a mistake that I could never undo. One evening, he came home angry again. He shouted about his business, his money, and the people he hated. I stood still, silent, tired of his words. He called me heartless, but I no longer cared. His anger grew stronger every day. Months later, he had an accident with his horse. People said he fell during a race. He never came back home alive. I did not cry. I felt no hate, no joy, no sadness, only silence. After his death, I sold our house and left the city. I wanted peace. I wanted air that smelled of trees, not smoke. I moved to a small cottage near the river. I planted flowers and kept a little dog for company. Life was quiet. Sometimes I thought about Miss Havisham and her sad eyes. I thought about my sister's small house, about Joe, and about Pip. I had not seen Pip for many years, but I often remembered him. When I sat near the fire, I could almost hear his gentle voice. I had treated him coldly, yet he never hated me. He had a kind heart that I had not understood. One morning, I received a letter. It said Miss Havisham had died. She had left a few things for me and asked me to come to Satis House once more. I felt afraid to go back, but I knew I must. When I arrived, the house looked even older. The windows were broken. Dust covered everything. I walked through the rooms and felt the past around me. On a small table, I found a letter from her. In it she wrote, "My dear Estella, forgive me. I tried to make you strong, but I made you lonely. Do not live as I did. Open your heart before it is too late." I sat there for a long time, reading her words again and again. I cried quietly. Her house, once full of shadows, was now only a memory. I left it behind and walked into the garden. The sky was soft and gray. The wind was gentle on my face. I whispered, "Goodbye, Miss Havisham." Months passed. I continued my quiet life by the river. One afternoon, I decided to visit my old village. When I arrived, nothing looked the same. The people were older. Some houses were new, others gone. But Joe's little house still stood, warm and clean. Joe was outside, working with his tools. When he saw me, he smiled kindly. He was older now, but his smile was still the same. "Miss Estella," he said softly, "it's been a long time." I told him I had come to see how he was. He said he was happy, though life had not been easy. His wife had passed away, and he now lived with his son, a kind little boy who looked a bit like Pip. When I heard that name, my heart beat faster. "Do you ever see Pip?" I asked quietly. Joe smiled. "Yes, now and then. He went abroad some years ago. He helps others now. He's done well." I felt something warm and sad at the same time. Pip had gone on with his life. Maybe he had forgotten me. Maybe he had found someone new. I told Joe I was glad and left before evening. As I walked through the fields, I remembered the time when Pip and I played as children in Miss Havisham's garden. I remembered his laughter and his shy eyes. I wished I could see him just once more. Time passed, and I grew used to living alone. My days were peaceful, but sometimes, when the sun set, I would look at the water and think of all that had been lost because of pride. Then, one quiet afternoon, as I was walking near the old Satis house, I saw someone standing there. The house was gone now, only bricks and grass remained. The person turned around, and I stopped. It was Pip. He looked older, thinner, but kind as ever. When he saw me, he smiled. I felt my eyes fill with tears. I had imagined this moment so many times, but now that it was real, I could hardly speak. "Estella," he said gently, "it's been a long time." "Yes," I whispered, "a very long time." We stood for a moment, saying nothing. The evening light fell softly on the ground. Pip looked at the empty place where Miss Havisham's house once stood. "Strange," he said. "It all feels like a dream." I nodded. "A dream that hurt us both." He looked at me kindly. "You have changed, Estella. There is peace in your face now." I smiled sadly. "I have learned what peace costs, Pip. It took losing everything." He did not answer for a while. Then he said, "I never stopped caring for you, even when I knew you could not love me." I felt tears in my eyes. "You gave me the only love I ever knew, Pip." I did not understand it then. I was blind. We walked together through the garden that had once been full of roses. Now it was only wild grass and silence. The air smelled of rain. I said softly, "I am not the same woman I was. The coldness is gone. I hope you can forgive who I used to be." "There is nothing to forgive," he said. "We were both young and lost. Life has changed us." I looked at him, and in his eyes I saw the boy from long ago, the boy who had once given me his heart without asking for anything in return. I took a deep breath. "If I could go back," I said, "I would not break it." He smiled gently. "We cannot go back, Estella, but maybe we can start again, even as friends." I nodded. "I would like that." We walked in silence, side by side, until the sky turned orange and gold. The air was soft, and the wind carried the sound of the river far away. I looked at Pip and felt something peaceful inside me, something warm and calm. When we reached the gate, Pip stopped. "Will you stay in the village?" he asked. "For a while," I said. "The world feels smaller now, but it is kinder too." He smiled. "Then maybe we will meet again." "Maybe," I said softly. He held out his hand. I placed mine in his. It was the same hand that once belonged to a boy in Miss Havisham's garden, full of hope. We stood there for a moment, saying nothing, as the light faded. When he walked away, I watched him go until he disappeared into the dusk. I did not cry this time. My heart was no longer heavy. I had lived through pain and learned what truly mattered. I turned toward the ruins of the old house one last time. The walls were gone, but the memories stayed. I whispered into the wind, "Thank you, Pip." Then I walked away, my steps light, my heart quiet. For the first time, I felt free, not rich, not proud, not broken, just human, just alive. And though life would go on, I knew one thing for sure. Some love does not fade with time. It changes shape. It waits. It forgives. And that is what my great expectation finally became. My name is Fantine. I was born in a small French town many years ago. My parents died when I was young, so I grew up alone. I did not have much, but I had dreams. I wanted a quiet, happy life. I wanted to be loved. When I was 18, I met a young man named Tholomyès. He was handsome, rich, and funny. He spoke to me kindly, and I felt special. I thought maybe this was love. We went for walks, laughed, and talked for hours. He bought me flowers and promised me a bright future. I believed every word he said. But one day, he went away. He said he was going back to Paris and that he would return soon. I waited for weeks, then months, but he never came back. He left me with something he did not know about. A baby girl. When I looked at her for the first time, I cried. She was small, beautiful, and perfect. I named her Cosette. I did not have family or money, but I had my little girl. She became my whole world. I worked wherever I could, washing clothes, cleaning houses, doing small jobs. Every time I looked at Cosette, I smiled again. Even when I was tired, I said to myself, for her, I can do anything. But life became harder. People looked down on me because I had no husband. In those days, women like me were judged and treated badly. Some people refused to give me work. I tried to hide my pain, but my heart was heavy. I wanted Cosette to have a better life, a safe life. So I made a difficult choice. One morning, I left my small town with Cosette in my arms. I walked for many miles through rain and cold wind, searching for a place where someone could take care of her while I worked. I reached a village called Montfermeil, where a small inn was run by a man named Monsieur Thénardier and his wife Madame Thénardier. They had 2 daughters, Éponine and Azelma, who looked healthy and happy. The inn was noisy and full of people, but I saw laughter there. Maybe, I thought, my little girl could be safe here. I asked Madame Thénardier, "Would you take care of my daughter? I must find work in another town." She looked at Cosette and smiled. A cold smile. She said, "Of course, poor dear. We will treat her like our own." She told me I could pay a little money every month for food and care. I believed her. I kissed Cosette and whispered, "I'll come back soon, my little one. Be good, and remember, Mama loves you." Cosette held my dress and cried, "Mama, don't go!" But I had no choice. I walked away, crying too. Every few steps, I turned around to see her face one more time. It was the hardest thing I ever did. I found work in a big town called Montreuil-sur-Mer. I worked in a factory that made glass and jewelry. The owner was a kind man, Monsieur Madeleine. He was rich but good to poor people, and he gave jobs to many women like me. I worked long hours, but I was happy because I could send money every month for Cosette. I sent letters and asked, "How is my little girl? Is she well? Does she smile?" Madame Thénardier always wrote back, "She is happy, but she needs more clothes, more medicine, more money." So I worked harder and sent more. But I did not know the truth. The Thénardiers were cruel. They made Cosette work all day, washing floors, fetching water, and cleaning tables. She had no toys, no new dress, no warm bed. The Thénardiers kept all the money I sent. They laughed at her and called her names. Their own daughters wore pretty dresses and played while Cosette worked and cried quietly. Still, she never complained. She whispered, "Mama will come back. Mama will take me home." Back in Montreuil-sur-Mer, people began to talk about me. They whispered things behind my back. They said I had a child with no father. Some women were cruel and did not want me near them. One day, a lady from the factory told my secret to the manager. The next morning, he called me into his office and said, "You must leave. You can't work here anymore." I begged him, "Please, sir, I need this job. I have a child." But he didn't listen. He pushed a few coins into my hand and said, "Go. Now." That night, I sat alone in my small room. I had no work, no food, no money, only pain. I thought of Cosette and her small hands. I prayed, God, please take care of my little girl. Let her be warm tonight. I walked through the streets looking for help, but no one cared. People looked away when they saw my torn dress. I sold my few belongings, my clothes, my hair, even my teeth, just to send more money to Montfermeil. I didn't care about myself anymore. I only cared about Cosette. Every time I sent money, I whispered, "Sleep well, my angel. Mama loves you." Winter came. The nights were cold, and I was often sick. Sometimes I couldn't walk far, but I pushed myself. I dreamed of the day I would see Cosette again. Her face kept me alive. Before I continue rest of the story, please like, subscribe, share, and tell me where you are listening from. Your support means a lot to me. Now let's continue. After I lost my job, the days became dark and long. I woke up each morning with no reason, only hunger in my stomach and pain in my heart. My small room was cold, and the walls were thin. I could hear the rain outside, but I had no money for firewood. Sometimes I sat by the window and watched people passing on the street. They looked warm and happy, wearing good clothes and smiling. I thought about the time when I had a job, when people talked to me with respect. Now, no one looked at me. When they did, it was with disgust, as if I was less than human. I still sent money to Montfermeil whenever I could. I stopped eating so that I could send one more coin. I sold my hair when I could not find food. Then I sold my teeth when my landlord wanted rent. Every small thing I lost made me weaker. But each time I thought of my little Cosette, I said to myself, just one more day, one more try. The winter that year was cruel. My clothes were thin, and the snow fell without mercy. One night, I was so cold that I could not feel my fingers. I went to the market to beg for work, but the shopkeeper told me to leave. "Go away," he said. "I don't help women like you." I wanted to cry, but I kept walking. Later that night, a man followed me down the street. He said, "Come with me. I can give you money." I didn't understand at first. Then I saw the way he looked at me. My heart broke. I turned away and ran. But hunger and cold don't let you stay proud for long. A few weeks later, I stopped fighting. I let myself fall into the same darkness that had taken many poor women before me. I hated myself every time I looked in the mirror. My face was pale, my eyes tired. I barely recognized the girl who once dreamed of love and happiness. Sometimes people threw insults at me. Sometimes they laughed. I did not answer them. I only thought, I am doing this for my daughter. That thought was the only light left in my life. One evening, there was a fight in the street. Some men were drunk and shouting. A policeman came running and started asking questions. When he saw me standing there, he thought I was part of the trouble. He grabbed my arm roughly and said, "You again, Fantine. You are always in the wrong place." I tried to explain that I was only walking, but he didn't listen. The people in the street laughed as he pulled me toward the police station. My heart was full of shame. I thought of Cosette. If she saw me now, she would not know her mother. Inside the police station, the officer who sat behind the desk was tall, with cold, sharp eyes. His name was Inspector Javert. Everyone in the town knew him. He believed in the law more than in people. For him, every poor person was a liar and a criminal. He looked at me as if I was dirt. "What has she done?" he asked the policeman. "Nothing much," the officer replied. "She was shouting in the street." 5 years in prison," said Javert coldly. "Please, sir," I cried. "I did nothing wrong. I am just a poor woman. I have a little daughter. She is sick and needs me." Javert looked at me without a sign of pity. "The law is the law," he said. "You broke it." At that moment, another man entered the room. He wore simple clothes but looked important. His eyes were calm and kind. The policemen stood up quickly when they saw him. "Monsieur le Maire," said Javert, bowing. It was the mayor of Montreuil-sur-Mer, Monsieur Madeleine. He looked at me with surprise. "What has she done?" he asked gently. "She insulted a man in the street," Javert said. I tried to speak. "He threw snow in my face. I begged him to stop. He laughed at me." Madeleine turned to Javert. "And for that, you want to send her to prison for 5 years?" "The law is the law, Monsieur le Maire," Javert repeated. "She is a bad woman." Madeleine looked at me again. "What is your name?" I whispered. "Fantine." Then he said softly, "Release her." Javert's face turned red. "But, sir—" "I said release her," Madeleine said firmly. "She has suffered enough." The policeman let go of my arm. I fell to my knees and began to cry. "Thank you, sir," I whispered. "You saved me." Madeleine helped me stand. "Go home and rest," he said. I tried to walk, but my body was weak. I coughed again and again. My lungs hurt. I could not stop shaking. I left the station and walked back to my small room, holding my chest. That night, I was more ill than ever before. The next day, I was lying in bed, too weak to move. Someone knocked on the door. I thought it was the landlord asking for rent again. I said, "Please, not today." But when the door opened, it was not him. It was Monsieur Madeleine. He came in quietly and sat beside my bed. I was too tired to speak. He looked around the room and saw my few things: an old blanket, a broken chair, and some papers from Montfermeil. He picked up one letter and read it. His face grew serious. "The Thénardiers?" he asked. "They are the people who take care of your daughter?" I nodded weakly. "Yes, sir. I send them money. They say she is sick, so I must send more." He sighed deeply. "They are not honest people." I started crying. "Please, sir, I just want my little girl. I want to see her again before I die." He looked at me kindly. "You will see her," he said. "I promise you that." I stared at him, not sure if I heard right. "You will bring her to me?" He smiled softly. "Yes. I will go to Montfermeil and bring your daughter back." Tears filled my eyes. I reached for his hand. "God bless you, sir," I whispered. "You are an angel." But my body was too weak to show joy. I coughed again, this time with blood on my hand. He looked worried. "You need a doctor," he said. "No," I whispered. "I only need to see my child." He stood up and called for help. Soon a nurse came and cleaned the room. She brought food and water. For the first time in months, I felt cared for. Days passed, and I grew sicker. Every time the door opened, I hoped to see Cosette, but she did not come. One night, I had a dream. I saw her running toward me, wearing a white dress, laughing under the trees. I called her name, "Cosette," but she ran away into the light. When I woke, my heart ached with both pain and hope. While I was lying sick, a strange thing happened in the town. A man was arrested in another village. The police said he was a thief, a dangerous criminal named Jean Valjean, who had escaped from prison years ago. Inspector Javert was sure that man was the same person as Monsieur Madeleine, our mayor. He went to the mayor's office and said, "I know who you are. You are Jean Valjean." But Javert was wrong about many things. He believed only in punishment, not in change. The mayor, in truth, was Jean Valjean, but he was not a criminal anymore. He had changed his life and become a good man. He had helped many poor people, given jobs to hundreds, and saved lives. Still, he was haunted by his past. After Javert's words, Valjean knew he could not hide any more. He left town quietly, but before leaving, he went to see me one last time. I was lying in bed, breathing slowly. When I opened my eyes, I saw him. "Cosette," I whispered, thinking he had brought her. "Not yet," he said gently, "but I will find her. I give you my word." I smiled weakly. "You are very kind. Tell her I love her." "I will," he said. I wanted to say more, but my voice was gone. He held my hand until I fell asleep. The next morning, the nurse found me cold and still. My face looked peaceful. The suffering was over. Later that day, Jean Valjean stood by my bed for a long time. He looked at me and said quietly, "I promise, Fantine. I will take care of your little girl." Then he covered my face with a cloth and left the room, tears in his eyes. Outside, the snow was falling again, just as it had the night I lost everything. But this time, there was something different. The world had taken Fantine, but her love would live on through her child and through the man who had seen her pain. Jean Valjean kept his promise. He went to Montfermeil to find Cosette, to give her the life her mother had dreamed of. The story of Fantine's suffering was not the end. It was the beginning of a new light for her daughter. The road to Montfermeil was long and cold. Jean Valjean walked quietly through the snow, thinking about the woman he had promised to help. He saw her pale face in his mind, her weak voice whispering, "Tell her I love her." He carried that promise like a fire in his heart. The wind was strong, but he did not stop. Each step brought him closer to the child who waited in sadness, the child who did not know that help was on the way. When he reached the village, the night was dark. He asked people, "Where can I find the Thénardiers?" A man pointed to a small inn near the woods. The light from its windows was weak, but voices could be heard inside. Jean Valjean walked closer and stopped when he heard a small noise from the forest. It was the sound of someone crying. He followed the sound and saw a tiny figure near a frozen well. The child was trying to lift a heavy bucket of water with her thin hands. Her clothes were torn and her feet were bare in the snow. The bucket fell, splashing water on her dress. She began to cry softly. Jean Valjean's heart broke at the sight. He stepped closer and said, "Little one, what are you doing here?" She looked up with frightened eyes. "I'm fetching water, monsieur," she said in a small voice. "It's too heavy for you," he said kindly. He lifted the bucket with one hand. "What is your name?" "My name is Cosette," she said. The name hit his heart like a bell. "Cosette," he whispered. "Your mother's name was Fantine." She looked at him, confused. "You know my mamma?" "Yes," he said softly. "I knew her. She loved you more than anything." Cosette looked down and said, "Madame Thénardier says my mamma doesn't care about me anymore." Jean Valjean felt anger rise in his chest. "That is not true," he said. "Your mother loved you with all her heart." He carried the bucket to the inn and walked inside with Cosette. The room was full of noise, people drinking, laughing, and shouting. Madame Thénardier saw them and frowned. "What are you doing with that child?" she asked sharply. "She was outside in the cold," Jean Valjean said calmly, "fetching water while everyone else is warm." Madame Thénardier laughed. "That's what she's here for. She must earn her stay. Her mother left her long ago." Jean Valjean looked around. The Thénardiers' 2 daughters were wearing fine dresses and sitting by the fire. Cosette stood behind him, shaking from fear. He put his hand on her shoulder to comfort her. "She doesn't look well cared for," he said. "I believe her mother sent money for her, didn't she?" Madame Thénardier smiled falsely. "Ah, yes, but it wasn't much. Children are expensive, monsieur. She eats a lot." Cosette lowered her eyes. She knew she ate almost nothing. Jean Valjean took out his wallet and placed a gold coin on the table. "Here," he said quietly. "This should help." Madame Thénardier's eyes widened. "Oh, monsieur, you are very kind. Have a seat. Perhaps you want dinner? Some wine?" "No, thank you," said Valjean. "But I would like to buy something for this little girl." Does she have a doll?" Madame Thénardier laughed again. "A doll? She? Of course not. Dolls are for my girls. She's just a servant." Jean Valjean looked around and saw a beautiful doll on a chair, a doll with bright eyes and a pink dress. He walked to it, picked it up, and handed it to Cosette. "Here, my dear. This is for you." Cosette froze. She looked at the doll as if it were magic. She had never touched one before. Her lips trembled, and her eyes filled with tears. "For me?" she whispered. "Yes," he said gently. "For you." She held the doll tightly, afraid someone would take it away. Madame Thénardier forced a smile, pretending to be pleased, but her eyes showed anger. "Oh, she doesn't need such things," she said quickly. Jean Valjean looked at her calmly. "I think she does." Later that night, when everyone else went to sleep, Cosette sat in a corner with her doll in her lap. Jean Valjean watched her quietly. She looked small and fragile, but there was a light in her eyes, the same light Fantine once had. The next morning, he spoke to Madame Thénardier again. "I would like to take the child with me," he said. "Her mother has passed away. She belongs with me now." Madame Thénardier looked surprised. "Take her? Oh no, monsieur, she helps me. She can't go." He placed more gold coins on the table. "This is for your trouble." Her husband, Monsieur Thénardier, came running when he saw the money. "Of course, monsieur," he said quickly. "If you can give us just a little more, she's yours." Jean Valjean took out his purse again and placed several more coins on the table. "Now she's free," he said. They nodded eagerly, their faces full of greed. Cosette watched, not fully understanding what was happening. Jean Valjean turned to her and smiled. "Come, my dear. It's time to go." Cosette stood still for a moment. "Madame will be angry," she whispered. "She won't hurt you again," he said softly. "You're safe now." He took her hand, and they walked out of the inn together. The morning air was cold but bright. Cosette looked up at the sky, holding her doll close. For the first time in her life, she felt warm. As they walked away from the village, Jean Valjean told her stories to make her smile. He talked about cities, flowers, and sunshine. Cosette listened quietly, holding his hand tightly. She still did not know who he really was, but she felt safe beside him. That night, they reached another town and stayed at a small inn. Cosette fell asleep quickly, her doll beside her. Jean Valjean sat by the window, watching the stars. He thought about Fantine and whispered, "She's safe now, Fantine. I kept my promise." From that day on, Jean Valjean became both father and mother to Cosette. He worked hard and stayed hidden from the police, who were still searching for him. Inspector Javert had learned that the mayor of Montreuil-sur-Mer had disappeared, and he guessed that Valjean had escaped again. But Jean Valjean cared only about one thing now: protecting Cosette. Years passed, and Cosette grew into a young woman. She studied, learned to read, and smiled often. The sadness that once filled her eyes slowly disappeared. She never forgot her mother, but she learned that love can take many forms. Jean Valjean never told her everything about his past, but she knew he was a good man. Sometimes, she asked, "Was my mother beautiful?" Jean Valjean smiled softly. "Yes," he said, "very beautiful. She loved you more than anyone in this world." Cosette would hold his hand and say, "Thank you for bringing me home." Whenever she said those words, he felt peace in his heart. One spring morning, they visited a small garden filled with flowers. The air was sweet and warm. Cosette sat under a tree, reading. Jean Valjean looked at her and thought of Fantine. In his mind, he saw her smiling, the same smile that now lived on her daughter's face. He knew that life had been cruel, but he also knew that love had won in the end. Fantine's life was full of pain, but her love had created light. That light now shone in Cosette. Jean Valjean whispered to himself, "She is safe, Fantine. Your little girl is happy." And for the first time in many years, he smiled without sadness. The story of Fantine and her little girl was not just about sorrow. It was about love that never dies, even after the body is gone. It was about a mother's sacrifice and a man's promise, both stronger than fear, hunger, or death. As the sun set that evening, Cosette closed her book and said, "Father, look at the sky. Isn't it beautiful?" Jean Valjean looked up and saw the golden light on the clouds. "Yes," he said softly, "it's beautiful, just like your mother's heart." Cosette smiled, not fully understanding, but she felt something warm inside her. A love that had started long before she could remember. A love that had saved her. And somewhere beyond the clouds, perhaps Fantine was watching, her heart finally at peace, seeing her little girl safe, loved and free.